Hello everyone and welcome back to another book review. Today I am going to be reviewing a fun photography collection called Indiana Barns. This is photography by Marsha Williamson Mohr with a brief introduction by Duncan Campbell. So this is a larger book and it is a photography collection focusing on, as you can imagine, Indiana barns. So what inspired me to pick this book off the shelf? What do I think about it, and what are some of my favorite photographs in this book? We're going to be discussing in this book review. So this was a book that I picked up 100% for me. I am a Midwest girl, born and raised, and this is close to home. I feel like there is nothing like the Midwest. I really enjoy living here personally. I know some people couldn't wait to move to New York the moment they turned 18. I love living here. I love the Midwest. I think it's beautiful. It just feels like home. So when I saw this book and I started flipping through the fantastic photography in it, I felt like these photographs really captured a spirit of the Midwest. Barns are, of course, an integral part of the Midwest. If you've driven across the Midwest, even if you don't live here, you have seen scenes like this. And I think the author did a really good job with her photography. It captured me as soon as I pulled this book off the shelf, and I was like, I have to flip through this, I have to bring it home, I have to read it. This definitely is a book that's going to have a very specific local appeal, and part of that is that barn photography is the focus. So there is a brief introduction and there is some forewords that give you a little bit of introduction, but this is not an architectural approach or a barn history approach to the topic. There's just a brief introduction and then there's photography of the barns. Also not included is background on the barns. So I've read other books before. There was one called Michigan Barns, which was pencil drawings of barns in the state of Michigan that had a little bit more information on the history of the barn that was being depicted. In this book, the barn is here, and you only get information about its location and a minor description of the barn so you can look at it. There's not a detailed description about interviews with the owners or information about where the barn was built or information about why it was built or the kind of farming that was done around it. So it really is just highly focused on the photography. The author or the photographer in this book also was going for multiple different angles. She includes photography of barns that are crumbling, so barns that are kind of wasting away. She talks about, or the introduction in particular, talks about how there is a movement away from the family farm where it's just a family individually farming, maybe with a few workers, to the corporate farm, to the big farm, to the mega farm with these steel frame buildings that are very industrial and designed to move a lot of animals through production quite quickly. As a result, some of these barns are no longer being maintained and they're falling back into disrepair and eventually they will fall down entirely. So in a sense, the photographer Marsha Mohr is capturing something that isn't going to be here forever for these barns that are falling down. And this is something that I see when I drive from where I live back to my hometown. There are barns that were standing when I was a kid or teen or even when I was still in college that have now fallen down, are just a pile of wood. And of course, over time, that wood will be decomposed and turned back into the earth and that barn will no longer be there. And except for the photography, there will be no record of the barn. So in a sense, the author is capturing that, which is also capturing a turn in how farming is done, the move to industrial farming versus the family farm. But if you've driven to the Midwest, you know there are still plenty of family farms. And on my drive home, I see plenty of barns that are still in use. So those are also being captured. Fantastic barns, still in use. So it's not just these sad falling down barns with a feeling of nostalgia, although you do get those. You also get these barns that are still healthy and vibrant and are full of life and clearly still in use in some capacity. I think the author also tries to keep in mind a sense of time, or a sense of timelessness, I should say, in the photography. I noticed that she really tries to avoid capturing any modern buildings, any modern farming implements, any like power lines, any cars. I think in one picture there was a truck a little ways in the background, but she does a really good job of trying to just capture the barn in its natural setting. And not only that, she captures a sense of feeling in these photographs. I can feel these photographs. Like, I know exactly what it feels like to be standing in that frozen field looking at that barn. And I think that when a photographer makes you sense exactly what that photograph feels like, that is when it is most powerful. I feel like I know what this photograph feels like. I can feel the temperature. I see the the corn that needs to be harvested in the background. I see this pond. I know what this feels like. And some of that is because, again, I'm from the Midwest. I've I've been to a bonfire at a place that looks like this. I've spent time growing up with friends and people who had farms. I know what these photographs feel like because I've lived it, but I think the author does a really good job of capturing it, because if I just went out there with my phone camera, I wouldn't capture anything nearly as good. I know what this feels like, and that's where I think the author does a fantastic job. Let me see if I can find one more good one. Oh, excuse me. Of course, now I'm not gonna find one. We'll just grab this one. So I can feel the temperature, the humidity, the season, the way the earth feels beneath me, the smell. I can feel these barns, and the author, the photographer, did a fantastic job. She also has a book on covered bridges. I'm less familiar with covered bridges. I think they're super cool, but they're not very common, at least not where I live. I don't know what state is like. I feel like I associate them with Pennsylvania, but I could be way off. So I want to check that book out too and look at those. But the barns, they just got to me. I'm a Midwest girl. This is what they feel like. I do want to point out two in particular that I really liked for different reasons. This is probably my favorite barn captured in the whole book. I just think this one's so pretty, so cool, and you can tell it's kind of fallen in disarray. You can see the brush that's grown up around it. But this was my favorite. And look at that sky color. I can feel this photograph. I can feel it. The other one is, if you've been around barns, you've seen this, a mail pouch tobacco barn. Most of the ones I see have been quite faded at this point, and I have seen a couple of these in real life, but they haven't been kept up. It's clear this one has been kept up, so I think it's really interesting. And also interesting how someone is keeping up an advertisement. So if you're not familiar, mail pouch tobacco advertised on barns. I believe, or I assume, the farmer was paid to allow them to paint their advertisement for their tobacco company. I think it was a West Virginian tobacco company on their barn. And you can still see this. So when you drive around, you may see, most of them again are faded, they're not this bright, but you can see where it said mail pouch tobacco on the side of some of these barns because they had given out the side of their barn for advertisement. So I did like those. Now, my one mini complaint has nothing to do with the photography, the writing, the style, the focus, none of that. It is the lack of page numbers, and that is only due to me and my book reviewing purposes. If I purchase this book, if you're looking to purchase this book, you're not going to care. I think the author did that because she wanted this like framing effect, so it looks like it's just the photo in a frame with nothing extra around it, as you can see. But for my book review purposes, normally I write down a list of all the photographs I want to show people, but in this case I had to use sticky notes, which is not the end of the world, but I was like, dang, this is a little inconvenient. But I don't think that's going to, or that shouldn't dissuade anyone from purchasing this book. This is fantastic. I loved it. I had a great time reading it. If you have any thoughts or comments on this book, please leave it in the comment section down below. I will link the Michigan Barns video if that sounds interesting to you as well, so you can check that video out. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day.